I'm someone who really likes good ideas, even when they aren't executed that well. I like to see the potential in a concept and just let my mind wander from there, especially if it's a new idea that I hadn't seen before.
That's why I was genuinely interested in checking out Samsung's new space monitor, because on the surface, it actually looks like a great idea. Plus, they had this really cool advertisement that just absolutely sold me on it. But while I do think the space monitor is a good idea, I also think that it should have been executed a little better.
Okay, let me start with what is a space monitor. No, it's not a monitor from outer space. Rather, it's a monitor that's designed to save you space. Samsung's targeting people who have simply too many things on their table to put a monitor but still want a monitor. Naturally, I was the perfect person for the job.
But almost immediately as I was unboxing it, I ran into a problem. Wait a minute. There should be screws. What? Yep, Samsung forgot to send me one of the most important parts of this monitor.
Unlike most of the monitors that I'm used to dealing with, whose stand and screen snap into place without the need to bust out the old Phillips head, the space monitor won't work unless you secure it with 4 screws. But that's for good reason, because in case you haven't noticed yet, the space monitor doesn't have your run-of-the-mill stand. It's a little more flexible. Rather than having a stand that sits on your table and takes up space, the space monitor clamps on the side of your desk instead. This way, the stand doesn't need to have a big footprint to support the weight of the monitor, freeing up valuable desk space. And when the monitor is fully upright, it certainly doesn't take up much space at all. It's about as out of the way as a wall-mounted monitor without needing a wall to mount it to. It was a pretty liberating experience if I'm being honest, and I also didn't need to worry about my laptop getting in the way because I could just leave it under the monitor. In fact, I could also rest the back of it on the little foot of the space monitor to prop it up for better airflow. That's it, my favorite thing about this monitor is how the stand behaves. Rather than have the monitor slide up and down the stand, the whole stand actually bends at 2 points. That means you can actually pull the monitor towards you whenever you want to have a closer view of whatever's on screen.
Now, at first, I wasn't very sure about this feature because the height of the monitor was always dependent on its distance to your face. But after using it a while, I actually really liked it.
Being able to do that adds a dimension to using a monitor that you don't usually get with conventional stands. I found myself pulling it closer to me when I was reviewing photos and editing videos, and pushing it away from me when I needed to write. It made me want to see this kind of function on more monitors, and that to me is a good indication of whether or not something is a good idea. But besides this rad stand, I found the rest of this 2,199 ringgit monitor very hard to like.
Yes, this is the part where I talk about the disappointing execution.
Let's start with the display itself. The 32-inch model I have here comes with a crisp 4K display, which I think is a pretty nice pairing with the size. But while I was happy with how sharp everything was, I really didn't like much else about the panel. For starters, the viewing angle on this VA panel was pretty atrocious and definitely not as good as most IPS panels I look at these days. The monitor also isn't color calibrated out of the factory, so the colors were far from accurate. Mine had an awful magenta hue to it, which made any color work I'd want to do with it practically impossible. And I'm not super duper particular with color accuracy when it comes to my footage, but I would have liked a monitor that looked at least somewhat close to reality.
Now, I've heard that you can get the monitor to be pretty color accurate with a color calibration tool, but I don't own one of those. And in fact, I only know one person who owns a color calibration tool, and I work in a field full of professional creatives.
Considering how useful I found this stand to be in my line of work, I was quite disappointed that it wasn't factory calibrated. After all, color is something many creatives work with. Oh, and this 32-inch version also isn't great for gaming, in case you're wondering, because its refresh rate is capped at 60Hz. If you want the 144Hz as advertised, you'll need to go for the 27-inch 2K panel instead. I also wish that it was a touchscreen panel, because when I have the display closest to me, I found myself naturally trying to touch the elements on the screen like you would with something like, a Surface Studio. It just made sense, Speaking of things that I wish made more sense, let's talk about the Space Monitor's port selection. It's bad. Really bad. Not only does it not come with any pass-through USB ports, the monitor itself uses a HDMI port and a mini display port for display instead of something modern like USB-C. That means if you're using a modern laptop like me that only has USB-C ports, you'll need to get an adapter because Samsung only includes a HDMI to HDMI cable. And if you want it to display at its native 4K resolution at 60Hz, you can't just use any HDMI to USB-C adapter.
Because a surprising number of adapters only support 4K up to 30Hz. I use this awesome metal one from UGreen, so if you want to pick one up for yourself, the link will be in the video description. But besides the display, I also have to talk about the stand, because while I do think it's a good idea and it's really cool, let's just say that the execution here feels very first gen.
For starters, the stand doesn't allow for the monitor to pivot or rotate. It's extremely limited in its movement, so if you were hoping to use it in like portrait mode for coding or browsing Reddit, tough luck. You also can't turn the monitor to the left or right to show someone something on your screen, for example, which is annoying, especially with a monitor with such poor viewing angles. Then you've got the fact that the clamp doesn't work very well on all tables. For it to fit securely, you'll need a table with a flat underside, otherwise the clamp will look really janky and not inspire confidence at all. Finally, the stand wobbles, like a lot. Even if I do something as simple as typing, the monitor will often jiggle if you have it in any position except straight up. That's quite annoying, but I suppose it's not that surprising considering how thin the stand is. But this slim stand also means you can't really operate the monitor with one hand. I mean, it's not impossible, but it definitely feels like it wants you to use both hands when you're adjusting its position. So I guess to sum it up, what the Space Monitor is a good idea that I wish was executed a little better. I had a lot of fun with it during my review period, and like I said earlier, I can't wait to see this kind of stand on more monitors. But it definitely has its flaws, and thanks to Samsung's questionable decisions with the Space Monitor's panel and its pricing and stuff, I'm having a hard time figuring out who this monitor is for. If you ask me, I'd give this particular generation of Space Monitor a pass because I'm almost certain that the next version will be much better.
But that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, notification bell, all that good stuff. Also, let me know what you think of this Space Monitor and this stand in particular in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Rory and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!